Chairs coming up, but in the meantime, there should be, I hope, enough seats for everybody who's here to fill in all the empty chairs. Judaism. I just want to say a few words of introduction so that we can move right away to our very full and rich and exciting program. It is a great honor and privilege for us to have Temima Gezari back with us today. Back with us today to mark this very special occasion. I'll leave it to others to say much more about that. But it is really a great honor and privilege, and the mural and the presence of the mural in this synagogue is so important in the life of the community and our sense of ourselves and who we are and the historic traditions that make SAJ such a special place, and that continues to bring the ideals and theology and notions of Mordecai Kaplan into the 21st century, and continue to bring those notions, which include the celebration of Judaism as a civilization, which obviously, most particularly this moment, includes art and the arts. Judy Bass, who I'll introduce in a moment, will say more about some of the people who are here. But actually, the last time I saw Temima was when the last time she was here, and she was being interviewed by Judy for the Oral History Project. But we know each other not in a direct way, but when I, with other people working on the Jewish catalog, we needed lots of artwork to illustrate the catalog, and so we went to the BJE, the Board of Jewish Education, and there was a very large exhibit of artwork done by children in Hebrew schools from all over the city, and some of that artwork was it was in the second Jewish catalog in the chapter on Jewish education. So we have this long-distance relationship and influence that Temima has had in that small way, and in that way, an example of the many other ways that she had a much larger impact on the life of the Jewish community than many of us realize. So let me turn the program over now to Judy Bass and say at this moment a special thanks to Judy, who really was not just the chair of this event, but really the complete guiding force, who really conceived of doing this and really has put in all the time and energy to make this the incredible event it will be. So without further ado,
and welcome again to all of you who are here to honor Temima. The Temima Gezari fan club is vast and wide, and for those of you who are meeting Temima for the first time today, you have something very special ahead of you. In particular, I also want to just acknowledge some of the people who are here, Temima's family, her son Daniel, her grandchildren, Subi and Solomon, and also I want to especially welcome Alan Schiff, the former head of the BJE, Rabbi Zion, and other colleagues of Temima, some from the BJE, some who know her from JTS days, some who know her from the SAJ, such as Fritzy Jacobs and Joan Davidson. And anyway, we have here really students of Temima, and many people who have learned from her in all different ways. When my husband and I first joined the SAJ over 20 years ago, I remember wondering what was this huge mural that we had up here in the social hall. It was so powerful and beautiful, but very unusual to have it. I said, it's like Diego Rivera. What is this? It was only later, when we were celebrating the 75th anniversary of the founding of the SAJ, that I met Temima. When I asked her, I was the editor of the 75th anniversary journal for the SAJ, and I asked Temima if I was able to contact her and ask her to give us an article about the mural. I then learned that the mural was not originally here in the social hall, but was originally installed downstairs in the sanctuary on the rear wall over the large entrance doors. And it was only when we built a balcony here at the SAJ, and I'm not even sure of the exact date of that, but I think it's around 1939, that the mural was moved upstairs. The fact that this mural was in the sanctuary was really historic. It clearly violated the interpretation, the traditional interpretation, which banned the representation of human figures in synagogue art. And when I did some research at the Center for Jewish History, I learned that when the mural was unveiled, on May 20th, 1935, okay, almost exactly 70 years ago, it did make history. The New York Sun newspaper, right from around that time, described the mural as unique in synagogue decoration and explained that the prohibition against graven images in Exodus 24 was responsible for the non-existence of paintings in Jewish houses of worship, but acknowledged that the attitude toward decorations on its walls was undergoing a broadening process. That more liberal attitude can be directly traced to Rabbi Mordecai Kaplan, the founder of this synagogue, who commissioned Temima, in fact, to paint the mural, and who, in his landmark work, Judaism as a Civilization, which was published in 1934, just before the mural was installed, specifically stated that the ancient interdicts against the use of human form are no longer valid, since the original fear of idolatrous worship has become totally meaningless. Temima herself wrote an article in the Reconstructionist magazine, which was published in May of 1935 at that time, explaining that a precedent for a mural with figures in the synagogue was in fact found in the Dura Europos synagogue in Syria, which dated back to the 3rd century, and which had just been excavated by archaeologists, including from Yale University, in 1934. You will hear more about this precedent in Temima's own words in the film segment that you are about to see, which is based on interviews I did of Temima in November of 2001. After the film, just to give you an idea of what the program is, I will introduce Dr. Joyce Norden, who was formerly a Vice President of Institutional Advancement at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, and she will speak about the behind-the-scenes story of Dr. Kaplan and the SAJ Board of Trustees. This will be followed by Dr. Ofra Arieli Backenroth, who wrote part of her doctoral dissertation on Jewish education on Temima, and who will talk about Temima's unique contribution as a teacher of art at the JTS for 42 years. Finally, we will hear from our guest of honor herself on her recollections of Dr. Kaplan. Before starting the film segment, I also just want to say that this segment really gives only a very brief look at the artist who is Temima Gezari. Although we here at SAJ know her as a muralist, in fact, she is much more than that. She's a painter, a sculptor, a writer, who is still turning out fascinating books virtually every year. And on a few different occasions, I have been fortunate enough to visit Temima at her studio in Rocky Point, where she still has annual exhibits of her work as well as that of her very talented family. And where she recently celebrated her 99th birthday. If you're interested in learning more about her work, I commend to you in particular this beautiful book, The Art of Temima Gezari, which was put together by her very talented son Daniel on the occasion of his mother's 80th birthday. You can find it in various libraries and on the internet. I was able to find it. You can also even see, which I did not know, one of her sculptures at Yad Vashem, and which is called Lament. And I also experienced personally for her second mural, which some of you are familiar with, which Temima did, which hung in Camp Sedgwin for over 50 years, the Harvest mural. And we'll see a little bit more about that later. Anyway, we're now going to start the film. Mellon University, and also taught at the University of Pittsburgh. For the past 25 years, she has worked with nonprofit organizations, and for the past 8 years, she was the Vice President for Institutional Advancement for the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College before retiring this past June. Joyce.
I apologize for my voice, but there was nothing that would stop me from coming here today to honor Temima. I'm here to honor her as a wonderful artist and teacher. I've been asked to place this wonderful mural she created within a Reconstructionist and Kaplanian context. Rabbi Deborah Waxman and I have been working on an article about the mural and all its aspects, and I think there are several points that are relevant today. How the commission came about, the initial opposition to the idea of the mural, and how Rabbi Kaplan skillfully in private countered those arguments, and how the creation of the mural demonstrates how Rabbi Kaplan viewed the SAJ as a laboratory, which helped to create his revolutionary ideas, in this case, the importance of art in Jewish civilization. I'd like to start with Rabbi Kaplan's diary from Monday, November 5th, 1934. He says, some time ago, Temima Gezari, as she was known then, a graduate of the Teachers College and an artist of ability, happened to say to me she would like to have an opportunity to do some murals for a Jewish public building. A few days afterward, at the board meeting of the SAJ, there was a question about whether to put up a bronze tablet in memorial of Israel Unterberg, who had died. Rabbi Kaplan then said, it then occurred to me that here was our opportunity to avail ourselves of Ms. Nimsowitz's offer by commissioning her to paint some murals for the SAJ. I therefore suggested that in that way the SAJ would be honoring Unterberg's memory far more fittingly than putting up a bronze plaque. The board discussed this at 2 meetings. Kaplan was unable to attend, and strong opposition developed. The argument was that Unterberg would have objected to anything so elaborate as a mural in his honor. In the diary, Rabbi Kaplan notes, of course, this was merely a rationalization of their conservatism, which sensed something unprecedented in the very idea of having murals in a synagogue. Knowing, however, that I sponsored the idea, they appointed a committee consisting of Harry Leibovitz, Ben Bernstein, who was chairman of the board, David Unterberg, committee meeting. Ira had a wedding, he couldn't be there, and Sel had a business appointment, but since he had led the opposition, he telephoned in a no vote. Kaplan then goes on to say, it seemed that the three present had also made up their mind in the negative. But then he presented his side of the case. He countered, quote, the argument of simplicity by giving the analogy of making a contribution in order of anyone to the Hebrew University, saying the larger the contribution, the more acceptable to the one who was honored. Clearly, the larger the dedication, the more acceptable to Unterberg. But then comes the key phrase in the diary. This, in conjunction with the stress I laid on the importance of having the SAJ take the initiative in developing Jewish graphic art in the synagogue, made an impression on Lebovitz, and he swung the other two to his side. Clearly, both Rabbi Kaplan and Temima intended this article to be an example for the rest of American Jewry. And we can see how Rabbi Kaplan got his way. The force of his personality. The board clearly didn't want to oppose it even if they disagreed. The strength of his intellectual arguments. And probably most of all, the board's recognition that the SAJ was a laboratory for a new and innovative Judaism. We also should note these were critical years in Kaplan's presentation of his audacious vision of Judaism. As Judy said, Judaism the Civilization was published in 1934. Very significantly, the very next entry in the diary after the one I quoted you about the opposition discusses the meeting that was held to initiate the publication of the Reconstructionist. The journal that so shaped American intellectual life. The motto they decided on was dedicated to the advancement of Judaism as a civilization, to the upbuilding of Palestine as a Jewish homeland, and to the furtherance of universal freedom, justice, and peace. All those themes are visually expressed in the mural. Now, the May 20th entry, which is the day after the mural was dedicated on May 19th, Kaplan again says, much against their will, the SAJ members yielded up to my plan for the mural by Miss Temima Gezari. She did a fine piece of work, he said. But unfortunately, the auditorium of the SAJ, especially that part where the mural is placed, was so drab and ugly, it doesn't do justice to her painting. This laudatory opinion of Temima's art was shared by a prominent art reviewer of the time, who just a week later wrote about an exhibit that Temima had at that time in a gallery. Ms. Nimsowitz has, quote, put dynamism into practice in the large and finished drawings. The visitor would hardly have been surprised if they suddenly became animated. We can see how much art was on Kaplan's mind, and the next diary entry was June 11th. This described a talk that he gave on May 27th, just a week after the mural was unveiled, at what was then a Reconstructionist dinner. He said, I spoke of Reconstruction as a substitute for belief in the world to come, and suggested a 5-point program. The 5th point for him was the furtherance of aesthetic creativity in Jewish life. By the way, he notes in the diary, the cost of the dinner was $1 per person, and we had no difficulty getting the maximum attendance. As Judy noted, Temima wrote an article in the Reconstructionist of May of that year that was published just 2 days before the mural was unveiled. And she did cite the example there of the Dura Europos murals. And then she notes, because she also was very aware of the very innovative quality of this mural. In keeping with the philosophy of the Society for the Advancement of Judaism, which sees the survival of Judaism only in its creativity and its power to reinterpret and revitalize Jewish tradition, I was called upon to paint a mural for its synagogue in memory of Israel on the earth. Now, in that same issue of the journal, Rabbi Kaplan wrote an editorial which was entitled The Elixir of Creative Art. And there he says, the criterion of health in any civilization is the extent to which it stimulates creativity. For this reason, we welcome the beautiful murals of Temima Gezari. We sincerely hope that these murals will set in operation the creative talents of other Jewish artists, that other institutions which house Jewish activities will see the infinite possibilities that inhere in the beautifying of their edifices. We are a people fabulously wealthy in untapped resources of creative life. If Jewish life would make it possible for more and more young Jews to give expression to their Jewish experience, and he goes on. This mural then is a marvelous example of how Kaplan viewed SAJ as a laboratory that he hoped other synagogues would emulate. And both he and Temima clearly saw the mural as an important venture that they hoped would inspire a renaissance of art in Jewish synagogues. Today, I would like to salute and honor Temima Gezari and praise her wonderful and very important mural. Her passion for art as a teaching tool that can elevate the world is a lifelong commitment that we are beneficiaries of. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce, for that fascinating look at a part of the mural's history and SAJ history that I think even the very long-time members of the SAJ probably did not know about. I would now like to introduce Dr. Ofra Arieli Backenroth. Ofra graduated from Tel Aviv University with a BA and a teaching diploma, and then received an MFA in dance education from Teachers College of Columbia University. After teaching creative and modern dance at the 92nd Street Y for 12 years, Ofra went back to school and received a doctorate in Jewish education from the Jewish Theological Seminary. She is currently writing a chapter for a book by Professor Carol Ingo on important Jewish women educators, which will be on Temima Gezari. Ofra will now speak to us about Temima and her days at the JTS Teachers Institute.
Imagine purple cows and pink skies. Not photographically true, but truthful to the creative mind. Looking through a creative lens was how Temima wanted her students to see the world. To imagine, to experiment, and to create was Temima Gezari's vision for art education. If the child wants to paint the sky pink or the grass purple, does it mean that he thinks that the grass is purple and the sky is pink? No, he knows that the grass is green, but that is how he sees it right now. Temima wanted her student teachers to respect this wish and allow for freedom of creation. She was always in tune with the imaginative mind. She wanted to give students enough time to experiment with the material. Livsha Schachter, who studies with Temima in 1950, told me about her experience with clay at Temima's class. It was just before Hanukkah. I stepped into the class, a new class. Temima handed all of us pieces of clay, but did not give any instruction. I was playing with the clay, studying the textures, the possibility of shape. Everyone around me was busy making chanukiot for the holiday. I felt a little embarrassed to be left behind. As I was looking around, Temima approached me and complimented me that I was was not rushing to produce something, and I was taking my time. She was so happy that I wanted to study the clay before rushing to make something. Livsha summarized her experience. She was not at all a product-oriented teacher. She really wanted the art to come out of our hearts and souls. It was not the end product that was important, but the process of creation. Long before Howard Gardner and the theory of multiple intelligences, before the Annenberg grants for integration of the arts in Jewish curriculum, Temima, a pioneer in the art, in the field of art education, championed art in Jewish schools. And not just art education. Temima was always very vocal about giving children opportunities to express themselves through the arts, rather than tell them what to do, draw or paint. Years before buzzwords such as emotional intelligence, portfolio assessment, Temima Gezari knew that any content, whether history, literature, or the Hebrew language, can be taught through the art. Moreover, Temima understood that teachers should experience art themselves. Studying the arts made teachers more creative and expressive and taught them how to reach their students. In 1935, Temima was invited by Mordechai Kaplan to teach an art education class at the Teacher Institute at the Jewish Theological Seminary. The goals of the two-credit class, which met twice a week and was compulsory, it was not an elective, was to train the prospective teacher of Jewish education in the use of drawing and design as aids to the teaching process and to correlate arts and crafts with the various subjects of the Hebrew school curriculum. Mordechai Kaplan, inspired by Chad Ha'am and modern educational theorists such as Dewey, believed in the importance of the arts in the reconstruction of Jewish civilization. He explicitly addressed the issue of the arts, claiming creativity as one of the pillars of civilization. He writes, "A civilization cannot endure on a high plane without the preservation and cultivation of its art. Art creation becomes part of the social heritage, which is a driving force of civilization." Kaplan argued that artistic creation is a unifying force of a community and a way to enhance spirituality, and therefore, Jews as a group must add to the cultural and spiritual values of the world. They must produce ideas, arts, literature, and music. As the dean of the Teacher Institute, he followed his beliefs with actual deeds. He established the arts as part of the education of future teachers. He made every effort to infuse the education of the newly nurtured teachers with the arts. In addition to Temima Gezari, who was invited to teach the visual art class, he invited other artists to teach dance and music. His daughter was the music teacher at the school. Sylvia Ettenberg, who was later a dean at JTS, studied with Temima in 1936. Sylvia explained, "You have to understand that in these early days, people came from neighborhood and communities where they did not have experiences with museums and art. When I was a student, Temima took me to museums. She insisted that we go to museums and she went with us. She took our education seriously. I remember distinctly how she used to say, 'My job is to open you up just like a flower.'" Gezari taught at JTS for 42 years. She left the seminary in 1977. In 1994, she received an honorary doctorate from the seminary. In her speech, she highlighted the contribution of her teaching career to her numerous students. Art brings beauty, identification with Jewish tradition, and self-recognition. Because of art, thousands of Jewish adults will remember their early, impressionable years in Jewish schools with warmth and joy. And indeed, Temima's emphasis was on teaching the young. In 1945, while still teaching at the Teacher Institute, Temima Gezari published a handbook for kindergarten teachers. It was the first book in a long list of publications. In this book, she expressed her belief that primary grades are the base in the structure of Jewish education. Children are eager to experience, to create, and to apply their imagination. The author departed from the convention of Hebrew school teaching. In her classroom, teacher is no longer the sole dispenser of knowledge. In this school, the child develops positive attitude for things Jewish through full participation and creation of art, dance, and drama. Libby Lieberman, who reviewed the book for the Journal of Jewish Education, wrote that the book is an essential manual that should be in the hands of every primary school teacher in Jewish schools. Gezari believed that teachers need to learn art skills. Only when equipped with these skills could they enter the classroom and effectively use the arts to concretize their teaching. In her many books and numerous articles, she described art classes as a completely new experience for teachers. Text dominates the field of Jewish education for generations, and all study again and ended with text. But Temima infused learning with the novelty of visual arts and experiential education. Since art deals with profound feelings, Temima believes that it enhances spiritual feelings and plays a prominent role in Jewish education. In a speech given in her honor at the JTS, Rachel Wyfus rightly named Temima as a jewel in the crown of JTS alumni. Thank you, Temima, for your passion and lifelong effort to bring the arts into our lives.
Well, I think by now some of you who did not know Temima before have a little better idea of the extraordinary talents and contributions that have been made by our guest of honor. She is not only a creative person herself, but a person that inspires creativity. Her philosophy of art and of teaching is expounded in her books, in which she reiterates that we teach and reach our children through art, that through art we can make a better world, that we all need a parent or a teacher to bring out our creativity, that art develops the human being, and perhaps her favorite, that the creative process never ends. As Temima herself writes in her book, Mama, Papa, and Me, my deep involvement in art is merely a manifestation of an abiding faith in the creative energy in the universe. Having once aligned myself with this force, I have become part of it, and being enriched and constantly renewed, I can feel more deeply, see more clearly, I can experience more abundantly the beauty and never-ending miracle of nature. Now, to express a little bit how another educator feels about Temima, I want to show you another film clip of an interview I did of someone who Temima herself has described as one of the best educators in the world, Chaim Perry, currently the director of Yemin Ord, a youth village in the Carmel Mountains in Israel. I visited Yemin Ord and Chaim Perry this past January and got to see Temima's Harvest mural, which had previously been in Camp Sedgwick in the dining room for over 50 years. When Camp Sedgwick closed, the mural was moved to Israel, where it resides today at Yemin Ord. Chaim Perry himself would have liked to be here today, but instead we will have him greet you on film. Okay. Temima, before bringing you up here so we can hear from you directly, I just want to say one more thing. Here at SAJ, we thought about what we could do to honor you and to keep your message alive here at the SAJ. And what we have decided to do is to inaugurate a periodic series of lectures to be known as the Temima Gezari Creativity Series on the Arts and Jewish Education. Wow.
My whole life is spread out here. From the time I was in the Hebrew school, teaching there, the Hebrew high school, what's yours? Oh, okay. Whatever you say, darling, you're the boss. Do you know how hard it is for me now, standing on the threshold of the next world, to be able to look back through you and through the mural, which seems to grow bigger and bigger every year. It has to do with space. I'll never forget the day when Dr. Kaplan, whom I fell in love with, even though I was scared to death of him, I was one of his students. And we used to hide behind the student in front of us in his class. So he shouldn't call on us, because when he spoke, the Kurdish Baruch Hu was speaking. He had a magic about him. But I think that his greatest magic was to be able to find a student who was very, see, I'm pretty much outspoken. When I believe something, I say it. When I hear something I don't like, I let them know. Let them be angry with me. So what? I have to say what I feel. And Dr. Kaplan recognized that in me as a student. You know, in his class, you always look for a seat behind a student who is bigger than you, so that you could hide. How many of you had Dr. Kaplan as a teacher? Come on, raise your hands. Oh, you're the other one. Oh, another one. Unbelievable. Unbelievable the power that that man's gaze had on you. If he looked at you, you just want to shrivel up into a little ball and hide somewhere. But he was so kind, and he was so gentle, and he said such wonderful things that would you ever believe that I was a very gentle little girl? Listen, I was a very gentle little girl, and yet, when I listened to him, I felt very strong. I felt very bold. I felt that I could do anything. I felt that I wanted to do everything possible to make the idea of Judaism as a civilization really come true. All right, so I painted a mural. How did I do that? It was during the year the time when men who used to do big business lost all their money in the stock market, and they were selling animals on the street. How many of you remember that? Raise your hands. So, yeah. It was an amazing time. I remember standing in front of all these men who just a few days before had money in the bank, and suddenly they're selling apples on the street. And I look at this and I say, me, I'm a little girl from Brownsville. In Brownsville, we were all equal. We were all poor. We didn't know anything about riches. We knew nothing about a beautiful house or anything like that. Because in Brownsville, we all lived in shanties or little stores. And it was the most amazing experience to find out that you were all equal. I found out later that that was not completely true. But it was a wonderful failed, another big business failed. I said, what am I doing here? Why should I stay in a place where there is no future? I know what I'll do. I will go to a place where there is a future. So I went to Israel. Applause. And I lived in the last house in Jerusalem. 2 years later, when I went back, it was in the middle of Jerusalem. I remember standing, I lived on the roof. I had a wonderful, wonderful view of the desert, of who's the guy who takes care of the sheep? The shepherds. Forgive me, by this time I'm allowed to forget things. Even if I'm not allowed, I forget. You're all friends, and you're all kind, and you bear with me, but I want you to know that coming back to Jerusalem 2 years later and finding that my house, that had been the last house in Jerusalem, and I could see the distant, who's the fellow who takes care of the sheep, the shepherds. There was a shepherd who always, way back, he would see me on my roof on the second floor. I lived on the second floor. And I would wave to him. And he would play his Hallel, a little Arab tune. Tell me, is that living? Yes. It was living. It was an experience for a young person to go to a land which was growing and growing. I remember coming back, and I went to see Mordecai Kaplan, and I must tell you, if you think it was easy to talk to Mordecai Kaplan, you are mistaken, because this man had a vocabulary, he had ideas, and he would listen to me. He would say, Temima, tell me about that visit. I said, why do they get off to say that Jerusalem is just an ordinary old city with a lot of Arab workers, and they're selling all kinds of sodas? And that isn't Jerusalem. Jerusalem is rich with this wonderful background of thousands of years. And he said, Temima, will you paint a mural for our synagogue? Yes! I immediately accepted. I immediately went out and found a little apartment on 56th Street, I think, somewhere. And it was a walk-through apartment, like a railroad, you know? And I closed the shutters, and I hung curtains on the windows. I shut out the world, and I got the art people to send me a whole series of canvases. And I sent them out. And people are looking at it now. It was the most wonderful experience that a human being can have, to have translated onto a piece of canvas your dreams of a whole history of the Jewish people. It was an amazing experience. And then came the day when it was going to be installed downstairs in the synagogue. Would you believe it? My mother, who kept saying, why are you making these little pictures all the time? Get married. Why don't you laugh? Because then I heard every day of my life, get married, have children. And but is it possible to do both? Is it possible to paint murals and also have children? Stand up. The children have children. These children. I'm not trying to say that they don't come near the mural, but they're a different kind of a contribution. And I am so proud that they sit here and listen to old grandma talk. I want to thank so many of you from the past. You are my past. All the schools I taught in, all the people that I met, the wonderful teachers. Don't blame me if I don't remember your names, but I'll never forget your faces. Stop crying.
Judy, thank you so much for all of your work. This commemorates a very, very important process that's been going on here at the SAJ for years and years, and for the 70 years since the mural was painted. It represents the most wonderful, progressive, intelligent celebration of Judaism, and I'm very proud to be part of it because I had my bar mitzvah in this synagogue, and I ran around the social hall many times. And I went to Hebrew school upstairs, and my little contributions and scratches are still on the wall up there. But the reason I wanted to speak to you now is that there's been a sign-up sheet going around the audience, which is great, because I was going to ask everybody if they would please sign up with your name and address. My mother has written several very interesting little books. They're actually page-turners. They're very readable and interesting, and they're partially autobiographical, but they also talk about Mordecai Kaplan and the whole century of Jewish life that she was a part of and that I have been so lucky to be a part of too. I want to send everybody here copies of some of these books. And so if you could please be sure that your name is on the sign-up sheet. The sheet is over there right now. Judy will have it. Here are a couple of examples of the books. And I will mail everybody on the list a few of these, of each of these books. And also, please, if you want to have more contact with Temima, She lives out in Rocky Point now full-time, which is on the North Shore of Long Island, near Port Jefferson. It's about an hour and a half drive out. Please don't be shy to just call up and tell her that you'd like to come out and visit. She's always ready to have people come and visit. She has a studio full of artwork there. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to go, and she would love to see you. So we want to invite everyone to please come and visit the studio in Rocky Point. And I will be sending everybody the books. Thank you so much for coming today.
We've had this SAJ Oral History Project that's been going on for a number of years. Many of you know parts of the history of the SAJ that we'd like to know about and like to preserve. So if there are any of you who have stories about Kaplan, the synagogue, whatever, that you'd like to share with us, also please put your name down on the list or talk to me, and we'd like to get in touch with you at some point and interview you. So thank you again all for coming and for being part of this wonderful celebration of Temima.
Can you see what's going on there? Is he in the picture? How do you have that?
Okay.
Let's see.
All right. You want me to face that? I'll face that.
Like
Right.
A little bit, maybe a little higher. Frame him, no, just frame him the way, this way. Okay, good.
Daniel, you asked me why I came.
Yeah, this is Alvin Schiff. Introduce yourself, say who you are.
I'm Alvin Schiff.
How do you know Temima?
I know Temima since 1948 when I was at Columbia University Graduate School, and I represented graduate Jewish students at a meeting convened by Dr. Dushkin of blessed memory, at which Temima was. And we had excellent chemistry since that time. Then I went on to become a teacher and a principal, and I had all kinds of relationships with Temima. In 1956, I was appointed the supervisor of day schools, Jewish day schools, and yeshivot at the Jewish Education Committee, and we hit it off. And from that time until 1990, including the 21 years that I was the executive vice president, and Temima likes to call me, oh, there's my boss. I was never her boss. Nobody is ever Temima's boss, only in the stationery. Anyway, I know her for a long time. 40 years we worked together very intimately. I saw her mural in Sedgwick. I'd been here and I saw the mural here as well. Let me say, I think that an important link was missing in today's program, which was great. I enjoyed it. Temima is such a person that you cannot differentiate between her professional self, her artistic self, her talent, and her personality. She's the absolute dynamo. She's the personification. She is the paradigm of a dynamic personality who used her personality and all the characteristics of her personality to help her do what she wanted to do and achieve and accomplish what she wanted to achieve. She approached life with so much exuberance, life and learning, and Jewish schooling with so much exuberance, with so much passion, with so much commitment, and more than anybody else, with so much self-confidence. If it can be done, says Temima, I can do it. And she was so persuasive. You could never say no to Temima.
That's right.
Now, as part of her personality, working with Temima, I just told you before that I recall at age 85, Temima loved and was so proud of the exhibit she made at the Board of Education. She had a lot of problems.
Children's art.
What?
Exhibits of children's art.
Right, the annual art exhibit of children's group. She had trouble with other people, but when I became the executive vice president, she had a clear road to do whatever she wanted.
That's
she
one
was
of the
great.
reasons she loved you so much.
Anyway,
You just
but here she was,
carte
85 years old, working on her exhibit. Who at 85 would be climbing up a tall ladder to hang pictures? That characteristic of her, that passion, that commitment, made her art what it was. It made her influence on her. Next, I'm a professional educator.
Right.
I've taught hundreds of teachers and principals, given them their master's degree and their doctorates. I have never met anybody who combines talent with professional activity and insight the way Temima did. Unbelievable. She was when I said she was a dynamic person, she was a dynamo of that combination of all these factors.
And it was completely spontaneous.
Right. Now, what I did and what I'm proud of, what I was just honored for, getting the Israel Prize, the President's Prize in Israel, one of the things I received it for was my teaching in graduate school and college. So hundreds of teachers and others. So I have a bit of a knowledge of what about the pedagogy of Jewish education is. She's an unusual pedagogue. She involves everybody. She never lectures. You saw her today. She says it makes a sentence, says something, people didn't react, just clap for me. Okay, she said something else, why don't you ask me more about it? She involved people. And certainly that's what Mordechai Kaplan saw in her that integrity that she had, that she was able to communicate things that were on her mind that a lot of other people were afraid to do. What you saw is what you got, and what you got is Temima Gezari. And I guess she's a great person. And she said to me today, she said, you know, Alvin, I love you. This may be the last time you'll hear me. I said, Temima, never. Temima, you're a stream, an ongoing stream. And it is impossible to say that. She said, okay, I agree with you.
Well, let me say that there are a few completely unique characters who are part of this saga. Temima is one, my father was one, and you, Alvin, are one of the truly unique characters. And thank you so much.
Okay. You mentioned your father. I just said it to you before. I loved your father. We had a wonderful relationship. He was a brilliant man, an outstanding engineer. He was an astronomer of sorts. He was so creative. He was creative in his way. Temima was creative in her way.
They complemented each other.
And when he passed away, I remember I told you you could never say no to Temima. So Temima sorrowfully told me that he had passed away, and she began to ask me to eulogize your father. I didn't wait her to finish the sentence. I said, Temima, whatever you want. And it was really my honor and my privilege at that time. But it's a big honor and privilege to see Temima today. And her wonderful son, Danny. Great guy.
Alvin, thank you. Thank you so much.